Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dale Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. Today's show, of course, is being brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, AG1, Aura, Mint Mobile, and Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia. If this is your first time tuning into the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, against all odds, the Chargers in prime time decided to give us their most convincing win of the season, albeit again, of course, against the Chicago Bears. But we talked about this for weeks. This was a get-right game. By any means necessary, however you had to do it, in order to keep your season from essentially being, in quotation marks, over, you needed to go out and get a win. And
it had the opportunity to be a get-right game.
Right. Was it flawless? No, unfortunately, it wasn't flawless. But in terms of getting Justin Herbert to a game that we're more accustomed to seeing, in order to get this offense to look the way that we were all told that we were going to see it during the season, there were a lot more good than there was bad. And obviously, the Chargers played complimentary football for a majority of the game and got a 30-13. I know. That's why I say majority, not flawless, but they ended up securing a 30-13 win, keeping their season alive and improving to 3-4 on the season. Dan and I obviously weren't able to record the post game yesterday, but we wanted to do it today. We are currently in the midst of this recording of being 48 minutes remaining until the trade deadline is concluded. So if anything, of course, breaks, we will let you guys know on that. But
I'm not holding my breath.
Nope, it's not the Chargers MO to do it. I would not put any money on Tom Telesco making a move at the trade deadline. But hey, we're all entitled for a good surprise every now and then. But Dan Wolkenstein, early thoughts, quick thoughts on the game before we kind of dig into the X's and O's here.
Okay, so initially, first off, congratulations to Chargers fans and the Chargers. They got a win, and by any means necessary is the motto, but they did what they were supposed to do. They beat up on an inferior opponent, and they made them look like an inferior opponent, and they won by 3 scores. You can be happy about that. You don't have to be happy with how the season's gone, but you can still be happy about that performance. In large part, so many good things came from that game. We're going to all of them here in a sec, but I think the bigger picture, probably my top 3 takeaways from the game. Number 1, Justin Herbert looks like Justin Herbert. He had a Justin Herbert style game, and it didn't seem like that finger bothered him at all. We're talking, if we look at the box score for him real quick, Jake, 31 of 40. I think at one point he completed 15 straight passes. 2 yards shy of 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And the guy was a machine. The guy was an absolute machine. Did what he needed to do. Some of the throws he made were insane. That's the Justin Herbert that you're accustomed to seeing, point blank. Now, again, was he perfect? No. We'll talk about the second half stuff later. But that's the biggest picture, in my opinion. Justin Herbert looked like Justin Herbert. Second one, defense. I know that Bears team is not great, but they have things that they are good at, and running was one of them. And the Chargers held them to 2.9 yards per carry. I think it was, 74, 73 yards total rushing. The Chargers now, I think they're a top 11 team in terms of rush defense. That's not normal for this Chargers defense. Rushing yards per game, Jake. This Chargers defense through week 8 is ranked 6th. And rushing yards per attempt, they're 10th. 6th best in the NFL.
It's nice to talk about top 10 numbers when it relates to run defense.
Yep,
very polar opposite from last year.
It was a weird feeling. It's a weird feeling. Sacks per game, they're already 6th. You saw Derwin James get an interception. Turnover ratio, I think they are in the top 10. What was it? I think they're 12th in defensive takeaways and 4th in turnover differential. So, the defense isn't perfect, but week over week, it is continuing to get better. And that defense looked like it was the better team, and you saw them kind of bait the rookie quarterback often in that game. So that's my second one. And third one, and I know this is kind of specific. I think it's a really big deal that you got to see Quentin Johnston get showcased a bit. And it's not like he had this insane game. Oh, he had 50 yards or whatever it was but you're seeing the team give him opportunities and give him opportunities that he is good at. And you're seeing him reward them with those. And not just for the fact that, Quentin Johnston can make plays, but Quentin Johnston making plays shifts so many things about the offense and what they can do. And it frees up a lot of stuff and allows them to be more creative. So I think that's kind of the biggest three for me. But bigger picture of all that is the leaders led on that team. You saw Joey Bosa come back doing the Thule celebration after that sack. Derwin James was playing very sound, smart football. You saw Justin Herbert do his thing. Keenan Allen do his thing. Austin Ekeler had a monster game. The guys that needed to step up and lead this team and are supposed to be leaders showcased leadership through their performance. And you haven't seen that in these past few games. And that's what's been most, sad, disappointing, concerning these last two games was the leaders, the guys you expect to perform haven't lived up to their potential. So those are kind of the big ones. Leaders led. Justin Herbert looks like Justin Herbert. The defense is showing up, and Quentin Johnston getting involved.
It's funny just to talk about, again, W being in the win column, again, considering where this fan base, their mindset, Dan Wolkenstein specifically were just a week ago.
You should have seen me at the game You should have seen me at the game, which we'll talk about in a second.
But again, it's, the Chargers are in an interesting part of their schedule right now, and the Chargers don't make their own schedule like any one of the other 32 teams. They don't make it their schedule. I get it. You beat up on an inferior opponent. But that was the results that you were looking for when it came to the final score. That's what should have been done. And it was interesting leading up to this game, Dan, that we had heard comments from the players, comments from the coaches about, obviously, the biggest one was Brandon Staley shortly after the Kansas City game, who had said basically like, we need to reset. Didn't know he was talking about his beard because the beard came off midweek. So it's like, okay, we're really resetting now. But then you heard comments from Austin Ekeler talking about collaborative practices and saying that was one of the most collaborative practices that we have had all season, which was interesting, just considering where we're at in the season, how many games have been in the books now, what they've been doing since preseason. And then you even heard that defensive coordinator Derek Ansley had brought together like the defense for a private meeting. And in so many words, basically said like, we're not having enough fun out there doing what we do.
They had fun on Sunday.
There's been plenty of times that this team has not had fun in the statistical sense, but yeah, they have not been having fun for a while now. But Dan, you bring it up. Let's just, if you take it from the defensive side specifically, Joey Bosa looked like the Joey Bosa that we're all accustomed to seeing. If there's one thing that we need to reiterate again, Joey Bosa, when it comes to his play against the run, when he is healthy, is one of the best edge run defenders in the league. And he showed that on Sunday night.
I think that was the best PFF grade he got since like early in the 2022 season. That's how long it's been since we've seen like Joey Bosa that effective.
Mm-hmm. And his snap increase, their creativity now, much like they've been doing with Thule, moving him around side to side between, whether it's side by side with Joey Bosa, side by side with Khalil Mack. Then they had Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa actually paired right next to each other when Joey Bosa ended up getting that sack early on in the game. I don't think it can be understated. The return of Alohi Gilman was probably a breath of fresh air to the secondary. When Derwin James got that pick, that was still a hit stick by Alohi Gilman that was dislodging that ball regardless. So that was going to be an incomplete pass. I think this defense was playing with a lot more confidence. They were playing like a team that knew what they were going to do. Jasir Taylor obviously getting the first interception of the game. Kenneth Murray still impressing week in and week out and just not letting people forget everything that was said about him. And he's just totally, it's not like he's taking a week on and a week off. He is consistently improving. And I thought Eric Kendricks actually had a phenomenal game. I thought that was the best game that these two have played paired back there with one another.
Eric Kendricks, to me, he had kind of an on and off game. Like, in coverage, he seemed like he was one step behind. Like, he was kind of getting exposed a bit in coverage. Now, against the run, 100%. But I saw multiple third down plays where it's just outside of his fingertips, and Bears were kind of going after him a bit. But
this was the drive where they converted multiple third downs before their first score. Yes, I get you on that. I think as a whole, though, I thought that was the best game that they played as a tandem for sure.
It felt like they were holding hands at times, and like they were that connected going to the football, which that's what you want to see. That's what good linebacking looks like.
Yes. So if there's something for this defense to build off on, now, okay, we're not going to just take the good and only highlight that. The first play of the game, Darnell Mooney goes deep for a 41-yard pass over Asante Samuel Jr. Not what you want to see from an undrafted free agent quarterback, allowing that to happen. And then thankfully for the Chargers, there was another explosive play that was that was right there to happen that could have put up another touchdown for the Bears. And thankfully for the Chargers defense, and more specifically Michael Davis, that ball was dropped in the end zone.
And Jake, that play specific, like the first play of the game, like, I get it, whatever. That one was bad. And Derwin James, for folks who are not there, haven't seen this, I don't know if it was caught on tape. I was at the game and you could see it. Derwin James immediately roasts Michael Davis on that. And he is in his ear for at least 30 seconds, following him from where he messed up on the double move all the way back to either the huddle or the side, I don't remember. But Derwin James was not having it. And you heard a lot going into the week about like these guys kind of having this come to Jesus moment of like, no, it's on us. Like, we're not doing this anymore. Derwin James understands the gravity, and Michael Davis cannot do that. You cannot let yourself get beat in this defense behind you. And the fact that the only reason why it didn't happen was because the guy fell down in the end zone. You're thankful that you're able to learn that lesson in a win, and it didn't happen. They got to do something with Michael Davis, because it's not all bad, but the bad is bad when it's Michael Davis. And you see the difference in Michael Davis versus Asante Samuel Jr. in quickness, in press versus off man. How, like, Asante Samuel Jr., I know that first play was bad.
He made up for it later in the game.
Asante Samuel Jr. was an animal in that game. And I think there were back-to-back sequences of off coverage. They target Michael Davis. One, complete. You see Michael Davis giving it up. Second one goes to Asante Samuel Jr., click, close. I think it was a fourth down play. Interception. Or almost interception. So, Michael Davis, you mentioned the bad. Like, that was part of it. And this defense has to figure out what they're doing with that other cornerback side or alongside of Asante. Trade deadline's half hour away from being over. I know there are free agents out there, but we'll see.
I think I loved how you just highlighted that, Dan, because I think that was one thing that we kind of forget about Asante Samuel Jr. just in terms of his closing speed is ridiculous. When he's on, he is on. And again, despite that 41-yard pass, almost even coming away with another interception. And that was a fourth down play anyways, so that he was still breaking it up. But he just said after that 41-yard pass, hey, that's on me, and I'm not allowing anything like that to happen again the rest of the game. So I thought as even regardless of your opponent, this was a game that this team should be able to build on defensively, especially over these next few weeks and who they have to play. Obviously, we get the Jets on Monday night, which will still be an interesting game. It's not going to be easy for this team considering the defense that they field. But you're on the road against a team that is also vying for playoff aspiration. It is going to be a more difficult test, believe it or not, regardless of who's at the quarterback helm for them. So again, it's defensively, I thought when you look at a convincing win like this and finishing 30-13, your defense went out and did what it was supposed to do and didn't give up. Did they give up explosive plays? Yes, but not as much as they're accustomed to, and not for a duration of the game. And yes, you had a drive that, was third down conversion, and that ultimately ended up yielding points. But traditionally, what we have seen this Chargers defense yield this season is constant throughout 4 quarters, that they will allow something like that to happen, or allow a team to hang around in a game by making mistakes. Dan, I didn't see those usual third down penalties.
I was with 2 penalties all game. Just 2.
Very, very clean game from that standpoint. So whatever the Chargers discussed during this week after that embarrassing loss to Kansas City, you need to learn to build off of that moving forward. Now, Dan, let's flip it over to the offense. Obviously, the biggest thing was Justin Herbert. As you said, broken finger, not affecting him at all. He was dealing. He was accurate. He was quick in his progressions. I think what I was more excited about, and yes, this is a tale of 2 halves, because
we're going to get into that for sure.
The first half, this was the offense that we all expected to see, that once Mike Williams went down, the concept of getting everybody involved, and even using Kellen Moore's own words of using the entirety of the field. This was the offense that we wanted to see. Why it took the Chargers so long to get Austin Ekeler involved in the passing game. Dan, coming into this game, I believe that he had only had 6 passes. When previous seasons, you've seen what he's done when he gets the ball in his hands. But he had only caught 6 passes. And for a Chargers running game that still is really non-existent, this is how you get your star running back involved in this game. Austin Ekeler obviously goes up. I can't remember what the yards was, around like 39, 40 yards that he ended up getting on that screen pass to open up the game. The Chargers were rolling after that, essentially. But again, Justin Herbert, at one point he had 11 straight completions, which was at that point his career best that he has had to open up a game. He just couldn't miss. He was hitting Joshua Palmer. He was hitting Keenan Allen. You're even getting Simi Fehoko involved in that ultimately gets him a touchdown grab. And then, of course, as you mentioned, getting Quentin Johnston involved in this offense, which is something that we all just have been clamoring to see. Quentin Johnston is not going to be able to become something great unless he is able to get confidence. And getting him plays the way that the Chargers were able to do in that game against Chicago is going to give him confidence. And that's what's going to build moving forward. I want to split this offensive conversation up into 2 halves, Dan, because the first half looked great. How the Chargers closed out the first half in order to get another touchdown late to Donald Parham was fantastic. I'm going to stop there because I want your quick thoughts on the first half offense, and then we'll, of course, talk about the second half.
Yes. First half offense, I mean, that's what you want to see. They had, I believe it was 4 possessions. First possession, 10 plays, 92 yards, touchdown. Second possession, 9 plays, 55 yards, touchdown. They're up 14-0. Next possession, 8 plays, 32 yards and a field goal, 17-0. Next possession, 9 plays, 75 yards, a touchdown. They're up 24-7. That last one was the end of the half with like 4 seconds left. That is efficiency. That is what this offense could and should look like for most of the game. First half looked pretty darn good. You saw yak opportunities for guys who are good at yak. Who to thunk it? Donald Parham getting what's the word for that?
It was a flea flicker
play. There we go. Flea flicker to a tight end.
Right back around too.
Kind of weird, but it works. It worked. But Donald Parham looked really good. You saw him stiff arming guys. Quentin Johnston, we talked about the yak opportunities with him too. At one point, took that drag route, the cross that we've always been clamoring for. Made 2 guys miss, picked up a first down.
It's a great play.
He had multiple third down conversions on that last drive to get the touchdown. And people are saying Quentin Johnston can't catch. People are saying he's a bust, and those people are wrong. And they will continue to be wrong as we continue to see Quentin Johnston become more involved. Austin Ekeler looked like a man on fire in that game. Again, we're talking first half here. We're talking the first half. Josh Palmer had some kind of Herculean Superman serum because there were reports that people were able to hear him screaming after that injury. And then you watch him hop off. I've never seen someone hop that fast on one leg over to the tent. And he was in the tent for what seemed like it was roughly 10 minutes. And when it happened, I think most of us, I know me, was thinking like that's a month at least.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's down for a long time. That's not good. Quentin Johnston got to step up. And then you see him emerge and he starts jogging around. You're like, okay, hey, he's able to run. Like, you'll get that. That means it's not as bad as we thought. And then he comes out like the next series. You're like, what just happened? Now, was he the same guy? I don't know. But that looked like one of those moments where that was like a sign to his team, right? Like, we're not going down this way. Like, I'm going to go figure this shit out. But like, we got to get this thing right. And for him coming back, that was huge. That's big for this team because no Josh Palmer and no Mike Williams, that's tough. Now, we'll see what happens with Josh Palmer when the reports come out later this week about how bad the injury is or what it is. But overall, like the first half offense was so efficient. And you saw every single drive end in points. Every single one. 4 for 4. And you close out the half, 4 seconds left. When they had an opportunity to kind of really shave into that momentum. It was, 17-7? And I'm sure everyone was like, well, here we go. And no, Chargers didn't let it happen. Right down the field. So that's my thoughts on the first half offense. So first half offense, first half defense, pretty darn good. You give that, if it was just the first half, I probably give solid A for the offense. And I probably am giving A- ish for the defense. Then the second half comes. I'll let you start with this second half offense. Because like there's a lot of people that kind of are trying to like give it rationale and make excuses for it and saying things like, oh, well, they're just trying to milk the clock and they're just trying to, go out of there with a victory. And, they didn't really need to do anything. That's not how I saw it. So Jake, what were your thoughts on this second half offense?
I think the thing was I didn't really foresee or I didn't really see anything as far as anything different that the Chargers were necessarily trying to do that they didn't do in the first half. But that's kind of the problem. And let me elaborate on that. Is that, and we have seen this continuously, and especially recently, because the Chargers have only scored 1 touchdown in the second half over the last 4 weeks. That's not going to get it done in the big picture. That offense ain't going to fly. What we've seen this team struggle with, and whether you want to talk about defensively or offensively, after halftime, when it comes to the opposing teams making their adjustments, the Chargers are not able to have the counterpunch to negate that, to stop them from them executing their plan. And it seems like almost every drive where it's just something similar. And you need to have that counterpunch ready because you know that their counterpunch is happening after halftime, especially after you score. They're going to figure some things out. They're going to come out and they're going to show the quarterback and this offense a different look. Kellen Moore and this offense need to be ready to have that counterpunch ready when it comes to that.
Jake, on that note, real quick. Do you know what every first down play was for this Chargers team in the second half? Every single start to the drive, I meant. Every single starting play.
I know what it is.
Every single drive in the second half to start started with an Austin Ekeler run. Or a run. I guess the last one when basically they're running out the clock. But first possession, starting the second half, Austin Ekeler, right tackle, -3 yards. Fast forward. That one turned into a field goal, by the way. Fast forward. 3 plays, -1 yard. That starts. Austin Ekeler, up the middle, -1 yard. So now it's 2nd 11. That ends in a punt. Next play, 1st and 10, or next possession series, excuse me. 1st and 10, Austin Ekeler, right end, 1 yard. Next one, that one ended in a punt, by the way. Or a field goal, sorry. Next one, 1st and 10, Austin Ekeler up the middle, 3 yards. Next one, Austin Ekeler, right tackle, -2 yards. Next one, this is the last one. Isaiah Spiller, left guard, 1 yard. Like, WTF? What are we doing? It's one thing if it was Austin Ekeler up the middle, 13 yards. Austin Ekeler, right side, 10 yards, 6 yards. Like, I think one of them was for positive yards.
Mm-hmm. If there's one thing that we have learned from Brandon Staley is that he's never going to go away from the run game. Even if for some reason it's a run game that is not working. But much like you came out with in the first half, getting Austin Ekeler out in space somewhere, because this Chargers running game has essentially been non-existent really since week 1. Even worse since Corey Linsley has not been a part of this offensive line. And one thing I didn't understand, Dan, which we didn't get a chance to talk about as far as the good for this offense, having a guy like Jordan McFadden in as a halfback, who is essentially instead of a halfback, it's a heavyweight back. Why did you go away from Hulk packages like that to get another big body in there to block? If that was your plan to come out in the second half, is to assert your dominance more in the trenches and run the ball a little bit more to open up the pass, why are you going away from what seemingly was working for you in the first half? And to Dan's point, every single one of those first plays of each one of those series was a run, which also tells you Chargers became predictable. Chicago keyed into that. It would put the Chargers in second and long, third and long situations, which of course is never the best sign, because you're not going to complete all of those 3rd and 13 or 3rd and 8 type of situations. Just that's not going to happen. You put yourself back there long enough, you're going to be prone to mistakes. You're going to be prone to incompletions. Those are drive killers. So when you can't figure out a way to get positive net yards on first down and putting yourself into second and third and short, teams are going to key into that. But the fact of the matter is that the Chargers did that consistently throughout the second half. And that can't happen. And whether we're just talking about getting the run game going or just simply putting together a drive that puts 7 in the end zone, when you figure out that something's not working, don't do the same thing again for the next 2 or 3 drives. You got to come out with something better than that, because you showed you're capable of that in the first half. Don't be allergic to what's working.
I struggle with this. You hear the Chargers coaching staff, you hear Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi talk about being like this like tough and rugged, physical team. They want to establish dominance, right? They want to be a lunch pail type. They want to be able to run the ball. It's like all of that stuff, right? And I appreciate and understand that in theory, like as a concept. But I'm questioning if this Chargers team is that. I know they want to be that, and they want to do that and continuously try to do that and impose their will. But far more often than not, they fail at it. And at what point do you realize, like, yeah, it'd be nice to be us, and yeah, we want to be that, but like, that's not us. And we got to play to our strengths. And that's what I saw in that second half, was this Chargers offense was just banging his head, doing the same thing over and over and over again, trying to kind of will its way into what it wants to be and failing every time. You saw short yardage situations constantly fail. You saw them run the ball for -1, -2, -3 all night long. They had 25 rushes for like 52 yards or something? Like, it's not great. And why you put the game in the hands of that play type versus the ones that are working automatically, it seemed, especially in that game. It just doesn't sit well for me. Like, and I know, like, they were Simon Fehoko had a bad drop.
Yes.
Austin Ekeler had a bad fumble. Like, I get that. And you can excuse away so many things, but at the end of the day, like, that's the offense. That's this team. That's what happened. And this offense, second half, again, was not great. They scored 3 points. The other 3 was really because the defense gave them interception. They went nowhere with it. So say what you will. You can excuse it. You can say they're trying to, drown the clock. They're trying to. I don't buy it. I think they're trying to establish an identity and they just don't succeed. And so why establish that identity when you have an identity that works? Until you bring in guys that can do what you're trying to do, stop doing it. So it just didn't sit well for me. And do you agree? Am I reading that wrong?
To put the kibosh on that, Dan, if anybody read Daniel Popper's latest article that he has talked about as far as to say, where is the Chargers running game? Here it is from a statistical standpoint. Since that week 1 217-yard rushing performance that the Chargers had against the Miami Dolphins, the Chargers have, and this is according to Popper's article, the Chargers have a designed rushing success rate of 22%. That's the worst rate in the league. No other team is below 27%. That's how effective this Chargers run game is doing. And I get it. You can't just be a one-dimensional football team and pass it all the time, because eventually defenses will key into that. I understand that. But in a sequence in the second half for what got you here, and the creative ways that you were getting everybody involved, even if we're talking about your running back, not running the ball, but you're getting them out in space. You can't constantly go to a first play run, and have it be ineffective and still think that you're going to pop one the next drive.
It's hard to climb out of 2nd and 12.
Right.
Like, that's just hard to do.
Defenses will key into that as well. So you have to have, as I said, you have to have that counter punch ready to go, because against better competition, that type of game plan and second half adjustments is not going to get the job done.
So I don't know about you, Jake. So this is full transparency. I got a little bit of trouble with my wife at the game.
Was she upset that you've kind of like over the past few weeks are really just taken a turn for the worst?
I think so, sort of, yes. And it came to light. We're at this game, right? And I think these last probably 3 weeks have just been incredibly taxing for every fan. I get it. And covering this team, and you start to feel invested, right? And you see stuff that is just frustrating and infuriating, and you can't make sense of it, and it blows your mind, and you're just infuriated. And the Chargers at 2-4, it was like dire times, and you like the pressure and the implications of that game were palpable for me. And like you and I were talking about the game kind of leading up to it, it's just like, this train's on the track and it's going to go one way or the other. And the way it's currently going, like, I don't like that, but there's still time. And I think seeing that game, right? And I remember, like, I posted ahead of time, like, I just want to enjoy this one. I just want to enjoy this game. And even in a 3-possession win, 3-score win, I didn't necessarily have like the feeling of like excitement. I was, and on the way home, my wife asked me, like, what do you think about the game? Like, were you excited? And I was like, honestly, like, yes, I'm excited. You love to see the team win. I said, but I think the feeling of excitement was like trounced by the feeling of just like sheer relief. And it was like 3 minutes left, and I was more just like, all right, we can go now. And my wife's like, what are you talking about? They're about to win. I want to watch. We have our child with us. Let's enjoy this. And I'm just like, I'm like decompressing. And that sucked. That's just a crappy feeling. But like that's I think where we are as a fan base or folks covering this team is your excitement is almost tempered because of where this team has put itself in. And I think that will change a bit if they can win on Monday night. I do. But the excitement level for me, and again, this is me being honest, it failed in comparison to just the sheer relief. And so there was just like a sigh more than there was a cheer. Did you feel that?
Dan, we talked about this last week leading up to this game. This was a lose-lose situation. Just talking from a fan's point of view here, anybody who's watching that game, in reality, it's a lose-lose situation for the big picture because the Chargers went in and they got a victory against, as we said, an inferior opponent. That's what they should have done. To this day, at this point in the season, they still do not have a quality win against a quality opponent yet. You've beaten the Bears.
The Vikings
the
are
Raiders,
500.
They won't be for much longer. And the Vikings. And those last two teams the first two teams you beat, you barely beat them. Barely. So it's just this question that's up in the air is that what Chargers team is going to show up. So if you want to take the good from this, there's good from an X's and O's perspective to say, okay, if we're going to try some things out, getting guys more involved, opening up the field a little bit, especially from an offensive standpoint, this was a game to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to see these things happen, obviously, moving forward. Defensively, I thought that there was a lot that you could build on as well. You need to see those things take place moving forward. But one thing is for sure, Dan, is that the negative trend that is going on right now is a similar trend that was happening last year with Joe Lombardi at the helm as offensive coordinator, is that the Chargers have not been able to put up touchdowns in the second half over the last 4 weeks. And they cannot do that if their plan is to go on a run and make a playoff push. I get it. Teams win in different ways all the time. But you cannot expect this defense to bail you out and hold opposing offenses to little to no points while your offense is unable to do anything in the second half. You can't rely on that. You can't do it.
That's not winning football.
No. This defense is not the Cleveland Browns. It's not the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not a lot of the upper echelon defenses in the league. So you can't rely on them to do that. Your best chance of putting an opposing team in a one-dimensional situation is putting up points and forcing them to either abandon the run or change up their game in order to try to get back in, make them play catch-up football.
And that's what felt weird. That's what felt weird. They had 30 points. And like you should feel like, no, that game should have been like 44-13.
Yeah, there was plenty of missed opportunities in that game, and most of them obviously came in the second half. So you can handle that against the Chicago Bears. That's fine. But you better be careful against the New York Jets on next Monday. You really better be careful about that.
If this game is under 20, if it's like a 17-13 game heading to the fourth quarter, I'm just gonna be like, man, like because that gives them opportunities to allow a fluke play or series to beat you. Please don't let that happen. So overall, great, Jake, grades. Offense, defense, special teams. We didn't even talk about Cameron Dicker, by the way.
We didn't.
Dicker the kicker.
Fantastic.
J.K. Scott, great.
Offensively, I have to separate because obviously first half, you look at it and the offense was rolling. You have to give it an A for first half. I think if there's one unit that I would say offensively that I thought played well throughout all 4 quarters, that offensive line was better. Justin Herbert wasn't put on his back. He wasn't sacked at all.
Pass protection was good.
Rashawn Slater, even though 2 penalties took place, I thought he looked better. Pass protection was better. You got to beef up that running game, though. Defensively.
Well, so offense, A in the first half.
Sorry, A in the first half. Second half, I'll give it a solid C.
So overall, you're going to be?
Yeah.
Then you are generous with the C.
Actually, you know what? No, now that you put the average on it, no, I don't like that average. No.
Four. I think it had what, five series.
Because I was literally just only doing like the individual grades in my head and leaving it at that. I'll put it at a C minus. Don't give me an average, because they still were able to put up points. I thought if Simi Fehoko catches that ball, that's a touchdown. If that's the case, obviously you need to fix that. But yeah, give it a C minus. Don't give me an average. And then flip it over to the other side defensively. I thought that there was a lot that they could build on in that game. Still things that you need to work on. Third down defense. At least they only kept it to that one drive of consistently happening. And of course, the explosive plays, just tightening up a few things in the backside of the field. But overall, I thought that was a very good game for them collectively as a unit. And I give them a solid B+ for that.
Yeah, I think I gave an A- for the defense overall. I think I gave a C+ for the offense overall. I got a little flack for the C+ grade, but like first half was great. Let's say first half is A+. Let's say second half's an F. Like, where you at? That's where you're looking at. So Jake, we another primetime game coming up. It's going to be an interesting week, but as much as I was just relieved that the Chargers team came out with a victory, 3-4, they're now like firmly in the hunt. Like realistically, Jake, I think it's one game between 3 and 4 goes from like the 12th seed to the 6th seed, I believe. So if they, for example, what I'm saying is if they win next week and other teams lose, you could be then in the playoffs if the score end or if the season ended the next week. So
unfortunately for the Chargers, the season does not end next week.
Well, maybe it's a week after that or the week after that, because the Chargers could look good. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. They're 3-4 right now. A lot of work to do. A lot of good came from that game. A lot of good. Still things to fix. You love to be able to fix things with a victory. Like, that's what you'd like to see. Anything else, Jake? Anything else to tell the great friends before we head out of here?
Chargers came away with a W. As we said, you can only feel so good about it. Got to get back to work for Monday night against a tougher opponent that you should still win against. but we'll see. We've seen this team do stranger things plenty of times before.
Yeah. Right now, the weird part is I feel like in years past or games past or times past, you feel like this Chargers offense can score with anyone. And I just don't, for some reason, I just don't feel that way right now. And so thankfully, the Chargers in back-to-back weeks against the Bears and against the Jets are going up against offenses that really aren't great. And that benefits them. Now, going against later against the Ravens and the Bills and the Chiefs again, like, that's a different story. Hopefully they can get right by then. But until then, for Jake Hefner, Dan Wolkenstein, Chargers Unleashed. Chargers get to 3-4. Next up, Monday Night Football at MetLife Stadium versus the Jets. We'll have all of that covered for you on the next Chargers Unleashed.